Is the volume good for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Jesse said, hey, you want, and I went, sure, what are you talking about this in October? And he said, Leonardo da Vinci, and I went, oh, that's fantastic. And the reason why that is fantastic is exactly what he said, is there is an author named Terry Pratchett. The first 2 books are really hard. I'll just straight up admit that. And about 3 books in, he stops writing chapters, which is neither here nor there. But he writes, among his many collections, he wrote a series set in a world called Discworld. It is literally a flat disc on the back of 4 elephants, on the back of a giant turtle, swimming through the universe. And it is a world where literally anything is possible. Anything is possible. They have witches, they have wizards, they have fairies, they have dwarves. Don't get me started on dwarf bread. And fairies are not friendly, by the way. They also have vampires and werewolves and Igors. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Leonardo da Vinci. Because this series of books is basically a satirical commentary on our world, a lot of the characters have loose real-world counterparts. Leonardo da Vinci does not have a loose counterpart. He has Leonard de Quirm, who is pretty much Discworld's version of Leonardo da Vinci, with a few minor alterations. There's also another inventor that probably doesn't have a real world counterpart, and his name is Bloody Stupid Johnson. Anybody laughing knows who Bloody Stupid Johnson is. Okay, so in Discworld, Leonard, is a minor character that turns up in a number of different books, but he's relevant in as much of how he goes about his world. And the difference between him and Bloody Stupid Johnson. There's a major difference between him and Bloody Stupid Johnson is that Leonard, his inventions work. And Bloody Stupid Johnson's work, but not generally for their intended purpose. So maybe one of the major differences probably between the two of them is that Leonardo is not trying to force things. He's simply allowing the flow through him. Whereas Bloody Stupid Johnson is definitely trying to force things, and he's trying to cram as much as possible into a single invention, which is why he ends up with an ornamental garden that is 14 miles long and a foot wide. That may be an exaggeration, but not really. So if Leonard is going with the flow, and why I decided to talk about him is because there is a passage in the book where Ventinari is talking to, I believe, Sam Vimes, who's the commander of the Watch, neither here nor there, about Leonard. And what he says is that ideas are always sleeting in. Some heads are more open to those ideas than others. Okay, so in science of mind, one of the things that we believe is that our answers are always available to us. We just have to be open to them. And I went back and looked it up. It's on page 52 in the textbook where he's talking about the flow. I love the concordance. If you haven't tried the concordance, like there's like 10 entries for flow. So the law is always flowing through us. It can't do for us what it can't do through us, which is just me reversing the quote. The law will do through us, has to flow through us to manifest for us. All right? So how can we be more receptive to that? When I do treatments, what I start with is the recognition. There is one power, one presence, one life, one love. And then I say it flows through me, in me, as me. So Leonard does that. Leonardo does that. Bloody Stupid Johnson doesn't. Okay, so if we're going to be open to all of these ideas that are sleeting in, and I had a really interesting conversation many years ago with another practitioner, and she told me one time I was overwhelmed with information coming in, and she said, well, you're kind of like a radio tuner. Envision the dial, turn it down. So you can do the same thing. You can envision that dial and turn it up. All right. So you're going to be more open to consciousness, right? And you're going to have all of these wonderful ideas flowing in. Are you responsible for how your ideas are used? Maybe. I'll give you an example. Actually, I'll give you two. One of ours and one of Terry's. In one of the books, actually there's two good examples. One of the books where Leonard has a fairly big role for a minor character is Jingo. An island pops up in the middle of the ocean. Two countries decide to go to war over who owns the island. Sound familiar? Okay. So the actual leaders of the countries do not want this war to happen. They realize it's ridiculous. They have to figure out a way around all the saber rattling of the one step down bureaucracy. And so Ventinari, who is, well, he likes to be called the tyrant. And he is the tyrant. He is the absolute ruler. But he has a moral code. He's not necessarily a nice man, just so you know. He has a moral code. So he uses a number of Leonard's inventions to get a message from his office, meaning him, to the leader of the opposite country. He also packs in a device that Leonard created that could create mass destruction, because when Leonard created it, that's exactly what he said. He said, oh, well, it can do this, but it could also be used for this. That would be very bad. Right. Okay, so here's the really cool thing. In this instance, Leonard is a captive of Ventinari. Because he has all of these wonderful ideas, he's constantly doodling, he's constantly creating things. He's forever creating machines that could be used for things. So what Ventinari decided to do was put him in a safe place where they could be controlled. So if you are going to be open to all of these wonderful ideas, what I would suggest is be surrounded by good people who can help you rein in your ideas. But the thing about Ventinari for Leonard is, he's a lot like Spirit. He's created this safe place. He provides food, he provides material, anything that Leonard wants, Ventinari will provide for him. And then Ventinari also puts a little bit of a break to make sure that some of his more dangerous things don't get out. Now, we're thankful that Ventinari is a good man and doesn't let some of those ideas out. Is he tempted to use them? Yes. So he's not completely Spirit, just so you know. I don't want to get about there. But Leonardo's no different. When we were up in Denver, we got to see a museum exhibit of Leonardo. And one of the things that we learned, which we didn't know, was that he actually went to a city leader and said, hey, if you will pay me so much money so that I can do this, his sculpting, his painting, whatever it was that he wanted to do, I will design and build war machines for you. I know. Aren't we disappointed by that? I don't remember if the city leader took him up on it, but if you ever go see any of his machines, some of them are truly terrifying. So when you are opening up to all of these ideas sleeting in, be conscious of them. All right. He did have another quote, though, and this is Leonardo, not Leonard. Make your work in keeping with your purpose. Most of what we know about Leonardo is wonderful. Not all of it. But guess what? He's human, so are we. So, if ideas are always leading in, how do we make ourselves more open? What are the qualities that we need to possess to be open to the ideas? And this is the interactive portion of the night. So, we've been talking about Leonardo. We've been talking about Leonard. We mentioned Bloody Stupid Johnson. I'm going to throw in Ernest Holmes right now, because guess what? A lot of the qualities of Leonardo and Leonard, Holmes had. There's one more person, but we'll talk about it for a minute. So what are some qualities you think you need to be open to ideas, to the universe, to spirit, to consciousness, to God, whatever you want to call it? Confidence. Trust. Willingness.
Some silent time to listen.
Listening. That's always a good one. Okay. Any more? Leonard is innocent. Completely innocent. Leonardo was not, but Leonard was. Sometimes he noticed that things could be used for not good purposes, but most of the time he created for the pleasure of creating. Okay? Trust was one that you mentioned. When you open your mind, when you open your hands, when you open your mouth, you have to trust that what is coming out is from God. What about ego? Ego gets a bad rap. But ego is the drive to do. It is what gets us out of bed and says, yes, you can do this. So a little bit of ego is a good thing, just don't let it drive. Okay? Open-minded. Being willing to entertain various and different ideas. What about desire? One of the things that almost all of these men had probably all of them had in common, is a desire to improve life. Curiosity. If you're not curious about things, why would you go out and try things? So being open to spirit means you are curious. You're curious to see what's next, what's coming. And then there's a large part of trust in that it's going to be all good. Forward thinking. Okay. How about unrestrained? That's where ego can get in the way. When we try and restrain, or when we think, I can't do this, or I'm not good enough. So unrestrained. When I was writing this, I came up with 2 more talks, one of them called Doodling in the Margins. If you've ever seen Leonardo's journals, outside of the fact that he wrote upside down and backwards, in Italian, by the way, there were all these fantastic drawings in the margins. It's like he's saving that idea for later. He's working on something, and then something pops in, and he goes, "Oh wait, that's an awesome idea." So he doodles it in the margin to save it, and then later he'll come back to it, or not, or not. I did mention creating for pleasure. How many of us do that? Okay. If you don't create for pleasure, why not? You don't have to be good at it. In fact, I saw a quote today that said something about courage of being willing to suck at something new. You know? The first time you try it, you're not going to be good at it. The 100th time you try it, you may not be good at it. But if you keep at it, eventually you will get good at it. Will you be perfect? Probably not. I've tried a whole lot of things that I'm not any good at, but I still do them because they're fun. Driven? To some degree, both Leonard and Leonardo were literally driven. The ideas were coming so thick, so fast, so furiously, they couldn't help but to create. But so many times we have told ourselves, well, I'm not creative, or I can't do this. So we no longer feel that drive to do it. But we can turn that off. There's this wonderful contrast between the inner critic and the inner advisor. So if the last category is listening, if we're listening, how do you tell the difference between the inner advisor and the inner critic? Any ideas?
How they feel.
That's a good one. Okay? Your inner advisor is going to be positive. They are going to be supportive. They are going to make you feel like a warm hug. That inner critic is not. They are frequently judgmental. They are frequently tearing you down. If an idea is telling you to hurt yourself or another, that is not an inner advisor. That is definitely an inner critic. Please don't listen to that. Because we talk about the still small voice. There are two, and one of them is partially ego-driven, and that is the inner critic. And sometimes it sounds like your mother, and sometimes it sounds like your dad, and sometimes it sounds like that one teacher that you just couldn't get along with. But the inner advisor can sound like your mother, or your father, or that favorite teacher. Or sometimes that inner advisor sounds like you. Be willing to listen. All right. So all of those qualities that we've listed, and thank you, Lenore. I'm going to add confidence because that was the one I didn't have on my list. Who else has it in common? Who else has that list in common?
Has what?
That list in common.
That's normal.
Okay. How about some of our big spiritual teachers? So Holmes definitely has that list in common.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about when he started reading, when he started pulling his stuff together. The Science of Mind textbook, I believe the first edition was published in 1927. Books from India were not common. Books from England probably weren't that common. And yet, they found their way to Ernest. And he was wonderfully open-minded when he was reading these books on poetry and these books on religion and these books on culture. He was open-minded. He was open-hearted. And he saw all of these wonderful ideas. So he pulled them together into what we now know and love is as Science of Mind. I would bet you that Jesus shares all of those qualities. Buddha, all of them, share those qualities. Lao Tzu, I think that was the right philosopher, share all of those qualities. And, as Judith pointed out, so do each and every one of you, to a degree. Okay, so now we've talked about the qualities. And we've talked about Ernest Holmes. How do you encourage those qualities within yourself? I'm trying to think of the word and it just popped right out of my head. How do you grow those qualities? How do you evolve those qualities within yourself? Study.
Positive self-talk.
Positive self-talk. Oh, that's been the biggest help for me when I run. Oh my goodness. Especially towards the end when I'm tired and really don't want to finish. Come on, baby girl, you can do this. All right. There's a book over in the bookstore called How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci. So what did Leonardo da Vinci do? He doodled in the margins. He journaled. He observed the natural world. He's got page after page after page of birds flying. What wings look like. He wanted to fly. He wanted to fly so badly. He'd be thrilled to know that we finally got around to it.
He actually wrote out the largest helicopter.
Yes, he did. I believe his helicopter worked, but it was terrifying. They had a working model in the Denver Museum. Oh my goodness, you could not pay me money to try that. No, thank you. He also, I believe, invented the hang glider. The hang glider? So he may have actually flown. So read, study, observe, write, doodle, relax. Have you ever been so focused on something that you can't get through? You hit that wall and you can't? And so what do? Put it down, walk away, go drink a cup of tea, listen to the birds sing, pet a cat or dog. Let your mind relax. Because when you're trying so hard, you are restricting. You are restraining. So when you relax, it lets your mind open back up. So those ideas can come in. How about experiment? Try it. Take notes. If it doesn't work this time, and you wrote down what you did, then you can try it again the next time. That, by the way, is called science. Experience. If you want to know what something feels like, something looks like, go and do. Don't read about it, or don't just read about it. Go out and try it. Travel to that country. Learn that language. Try that awesome recipe that you found on the internet. And then when it doesn't work, call somebody who knows how to cook and say, hey, what did I do wrong? I've done that a few times. So before I wrap it up, I want to tell you about a little fun thing that we got to do in Denver at the exhibit. We got to draw a self-portrait. And I think everybody should try this. If you saw the event that was posted up on Facebook, it had a really unusual banner. That was my self-portrait. That's actually me. What the museum did was they took a piece of plexiglass, actually it was 2 pieces of plexiglass, and they had a mirror attached to one of them. And then you took a dry erase marker and you drew on the front piece of plexiglass in front of the mirror. You traced your face. So we're talking about these qualities, and we're talking about all of these things, being open to spirit. And Leonardo was one of the first people to do a self-portrait. I'm not going to say he was the first, but he was one of the earliest to do a self-portrait of himself. And if you've seen it, it wasn't Greek. He didn't make himself look young. He didn't make himself look perfect. He didn't make himself handsome. I mean, he was kind of cute. He drew himself as he actually was. So I encourage you to do your own self-portrait. To see you as you are. To see you as who you are. Not who other people think you are. Now, I see you as all of the qualities that we have listed. I see you as loving beings of light. I see you as godlings. So I encourage you to do your self-portrait and see yourself as that amazing being of light that you actually are. Drop all of the labels that have been put on you, including the labels that you put on yourself. And then all of those qualities that we've talked about tonight will come flooding through you. Because we don't have to teach people to love. People are love. You are love. Just like last week when I asked you to say to yourself, God loves me. God loves you. So paint your self-portrait. Be like Leonard de Quirm. Be like Leonardo da Vinci. I'm going to leave you with a quote from the exhibit. I have been impressed with the urgency of doing. Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Being willing is not enough. We must do. So, I am knowing that the ideas that you are looking for are sleeting in now, and you are open. But let's do this in the traditional sense. There is one life, one love, one power, one presence. I am a part of that life. I am a part of that love. It flows through me, in me, and me, in as me, just as I know that it does through all of you. And so I relax into the knowing that each of these qualities that we have talked about tonight, you feel blooming in your heart. They are evolving to the highest level possible. And you are turning your volume up. Your receiver is working to its utmost ability, and that which you are seeking is seeking you. The ideas, the information, the experiences, and the experiments. Life is one grand experiment. Life is spirit having an experience of itself through you. Go and do. And I know this with all of the gratitude in my being. I relax, release, and know that it is so.